Thank you. So welcome today. My name is Ebony Johnson. I'm from the National Retail Association. We're a national body across Australia that looks after retailers, works with governments on all different issues. Today's focus is the New South Wales single-use plastics ban. So our role is very much to help businesses understand and prepare for different elements of these plastics bans. So I'm going to run through today. I'm going to run through very quickly some information about the ban. All of this information is available on the government website, which is a dedicated website, dpe.gov.au/plastic-ban. Otherwise, I'm sure the link will be provided. And so all this information, you don't need to take copious notes. These slides are also available. So it's just really for you to absorb, and then we'll answer questions. So just kicking off. Now, just once again, a bit of context for us. So the National Retail Association, we're a not-for-profit. Our job is really to represent industry, retail and related businesses, but also we're engaged by government because we know industry well. We know from the smallest retailer to the largest. Our role is really to translate what can sometimes be really complex regulations, or you're just too time poor in your business to spend hours kind of figuring it out for yourself. We're very experienced at translating that into what the average shopkeeper needs in their daily life. I'm just going to mute Deborah. Now, we've been involved with single-use plastics bans for quite some time. Over the last 5 years, we've been working across multiple single-use plastics bans, starting back with lightweight plastic bags in Queensland. Actually, the first state to ban lightweight plastic bags was, I believe, South Australia over 10 years ago. And New South Wales has just gone through that process too. Everyone does it at different stages. But it's not our first rodeo. So we're, as you can see, we've produced a lot of the materials that you might have seen in other states on other campaigns. Now, really what our goal is to make sure that businesses have what they need to prepare, transition and comply. We can't force anyone to comply, and that's not our job. We are not the regulators. We're really here to help you understand what you need to do, what others are doing. But we also take a lot of feedback to government throughout this process. We work with them to just relay what's going well, what are people struggling with, what could be done better. So you can see just here, I give, if you follow our, we have an Instagram called Real Retail AU, and that is all our team out across Australia. We have a dedicated team that all they do every day is visit retail stores. And everything from hospitality to all forms of retail, and visit them, run them through different bans and pieces of legislation. We also talk to them about things like retail crime, shoplifting, trading hours, anything that affects retail. But at the moment, a very big focus of ours is sustainability because there is so much going on. I will just note too, the New South Wales ban, currently there are about 5 or 6 different state bans rolling out at the same time. So I will flag, I'm going to focus on New South Wales today. However, if you operate an online store or if you've got a couple of stores across different states, I do recommend that you reach out to us or have a look at some of our other information because you are affected wherever you supply. And the rules are not identical. The rules are quite different per state. So do feel free to reach out. We're across all of them. We live and breathe it. So hit us up with all your curly questions. Now, getting on to the New South Wales ban, the ban is being implemented by the New South Wales Department of Planning and Environment, and it is enforced by the New South Wales EPA. So this is a remit of the New South Wales Government. It was really led by the fact that the government received thousands of submissions from the public saying we want more action on single-use plastics. So this is really making good on those promises. There's been a very strong call from the community. The government is also responsible for delivering public awareness campaigns, so community awareness and things like that. So you might see bus ads and radio and things like that. That is the remit of the government. Our focus is all on businesses, and we actually have a very broad definition of that in our heads. Is businesses doesn't need to be a commercial business. So it could be a not-for-profit, it could be a church group. So we consider community organisations and charities within our scope in these kind of bans because they are affected just as much by these bans. So here's just a quick list of all the things we're doing. We have a toll-free hotline. There's the website from the government. We've built all fact sheets and posters you can put in your store, all those kinds of things. We're actually visiting 650 shopping centres and precincts and malls over this year. We've already, I think the last count was 480 as of the end of June we'd been to, and that was over 7,400 stores we'd visited in person. We find, I know that sounds, you think, oh, you can just send an email out to everyone or do one of these sessions, but we know businesses are time poor, so we actually invest the time walking the streets and talking to people. So that's something we do quite different, but we find it's really where people get the greatest understanding. And then we're doing all of these kinds of online sessions and then providing feedback to government to improve future programs. So I'm going to dive right into the ban. So what items are banned in New South Wales? So there's two stages, which you're probably now aware of. There is what's banned on the 1st of June, which is just the lightweight plastic shopping bags with handles. Most of the other items are banned from the 1st of November. So really it's time now to focus on the 1st of November ban. Most people should have already transitioned for the 1st of June. I know some people, there's always some teething issues, and I'm happy to address them in the Q&A if anyone's still having any issues there. But to be honest, the last state that went through this was 3 years ago. So suppliers saw this coming, Australia saw this coming. This is the last version of this ban to come into Australia. So time to get on board and really make those changes. I'm going to try and spend a bit of time focusing on the 1st of November ban because there's more items, and that's what you need to start ordering now. If you're a business or an event or a community group, change now, start your ordering now because I'm seeing massive delays in supply. So I'll get into that. I'm not going to focus on cotton buds and microbeads today. Those are also banned in 1st of November. I'm going to focus on the foodware items, but if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I tend to find this is already being looked after at a manufacturer level. So we are working with manufacturers. Most have already moved to paper cotton bud sticks, and there's been a voluntary industry code on microbeads in personal wash-off products for quite some years now, and it's achieved about 99.7% compliance voluntarily. So that's been a real success story led by industry. And now this regulation now makes it law, and a lot of states are rolling that out. Who does the ban apply to? As I've kind of touched on, retail and hospitality businesses, I think everyone can really tell that this does apply to them, but it also includes markets, online stores. It doesn't matter. It's not just a supermarket ban or anything like that. It includes your online stores, and it also includes the delivery to your home. So the home delivery services and things like that, and any other commercial business that's supplying these items. It also applies to manufacturers, suppliers and distributors, of course, of these packaging products. I will note that the penalties are doubled for this sector. That is a statement of really making sure that the supply is stopped at the source, because it can be hard for a retailer to know that their bag is that thickness. So the government does understand that. It also includes anyone undertaking an activity for charitable, sporting or any other kind of purposes. I'm just going to let someone else in. So a community group, charities, government bodies, so your local government also needs to abide by this if they're using these products. But even your church fete, Meals on Wheels, Girl Guides, your sporting, your local sporting group on Saturday Kids Sport also needs to comply with the ban. So please don't donate these goods to a charity thinking they can use them. No, you need to solve the problem yourself. If you've got excess stock, please don't donate them. Businesses such as distribution centres and online stores that supply to another state where these items might not be banned are allowed to do that. You might have your business based in New South Wales, but all your customers are in the Northern Territory. The Northern Territory hasn't banned some of these items, so you can still sell them there. But supplying to someone in New South Wales is a ban. An offence is to supply a banned item. I won't focus too much on this. It's an offence to provide false or misleading information, either by act or omission, even failing to tell someone that you're giving them a banned item. So this particularly is, I suppose, really targeted at suppliers and manufacturers, so that you shouldn't, if you're a retailer or a community group, you shouldn't really be able to buy a banned item without being told that you're buying a banned item. Suppliers might be intending that to go to another state, and so they do need to inform you that it is a banned item. I will note if we do have any suppliers in the room, or manufacturers or distributors of packaging products, you do need to be careful about things like your website. The rule is in New South Wales, you must have something on your website on these products or some way to stop or prevent people in New South Wales from purchasing them. That's something different to other states. Is there's one extra step of it is illegal to have these on your website if you're not making it clear that they're banned items. So just another little thing that I think suppliers should really focus on. And you can't have these still on display. You might not be supplying your plastic straws to, or your plastic cutlery to someone anymore, but they're still sitting there. That is an offence. So just be careful about those little fine details. It'll be enforced with a very education-first approach. We've already had the 1st of June ban kick in, and we can see from continuing to work with the New South Wales Government, they're really approaching a very sensible, fair, education-first approach. I don't think the intention of government is to run around and find businesses. They'd like to avoid that if they see that businesses are trying and really are trying to transition. Their first point of call will be to see what you're doing. Are you really trying to transition? Has your stock just been held up? I think for a period of time, they might be empathetic to that. However, technically, there are no grace periods. Those deadlines are the deadlines by law. So technically you are breaking the law if you supply those items after it. It is up to the government how strongly they enforce that at first. But they are really focused on trying to support businesses and support community groups for the first point of call. But they can issue penalties, and often I get asked about penalties. If it really came to it, some of the fines range up to, for a supplier, it can be $110,000 to supply a banned item. And that's for suppliers, and retailers, I think the maximum is about $55,000 for one offence. So there is an indication from government, if they really do need to enforce, they are serious about this being an effective piece of legislation. We hope it doesn't come to that though, and it generally doesn't have to. We find retail, the general public, and everyone is really supportive of these bans. However, sometimes there's just a few little practical teething issues, and that's what we're here to help with. So I'm just going to focus briefly on the 1st of June ban. So lightweight plastic shopping bags were banned on the 1st of June. Now, I'm going to be very specific on that because sometimes media reports can skim over some of the details, and all of a sudden people think that everything's banned in their house. No, it is lightweight plastic shopping bags that have handles which are 35 microns or less. Now, what's a micron? It's a measurement of thickness. You don't need to be a technical expert on that. Suppliers internationally are very familiar with that measurement. It's how they usually measure the thickness of plastic. So they'll know they should know what you're talking about. And really, it's getting rid of those lightweight, flimsy, flyaway bags that get caught in the wind, end up in the environment. And it does only apply to handled bags. So I'll describe that a little bit more. But when we talk plastic throughout this ban, I want to just set the scene in that when I say plastic, that doesn't matter if it's fossil fuel based, plant-based, sugarcane based, cornstarch based, or anything like that. It's all a plastic polymer. So even if it's called compostable plastic, degradable plastic, bioplastic, it is still a banned plastic. So be very careful of understanding that, because I have seen industry being promoted something as not plastic, but you really, if it looks and feels a bit like plastic, it's probably, and they're saying it's not, it's probably a bioplastic and it is banned. So be very careful of that. And if you're ever unsure, that's what we're here for, is you can always reach out. I will note the ban does not apply to other styles of bags at this point in time. Really, there will be a couple of years that it will take to really adjust customers, particularly to all of these changes and things like that. So I would recommend that, I'm just going to minimize that, that firstly consider, does your bag have a handle? Okay, so if it doesn't have a handle and you're not using it to kind of carry goods, it's not a banned bag. So a fruit and veggie, or the produce bag that you get at the butchers and things like that, those are not banned at this stage. Okay, they are being examined by governments. However, because it involves quite a bit of hygiene and food contact and things like that, that might take a little bit more time. So it does not include all those produce bags on the roll. The also not banned is things like waste bags. If it's been designed as a waste bag, a doggy waste bag, medical waste, and any kind of sealed product packaging. So a bread bag or Ziploc bags or any kind of packaging you find on a supermarket shelf and things like that of pre-packaged goods, that's not a shopping bag. So this is, I think that really, a lot of people think it's a lot more than that. Really, we've got to bite off nice, sizable chunks. And this is a nice one for customers to start getting used to these reuse models. So our recommendation, if you're still wondering about bags, consider whether you need a bag at all. Your first point of call, where really with sustainability, is avoidance. How can I reduce having to use this, or how can I avoid using it at all? If that is an option. If only an average of 5 customers a day are actually needing a bag, because really most of your customers buy 2 or 3 little items, why do you still have bags? Save yourself some money. Stop offering some of these things that maybe have just been habit. If you do feel you need a bag, you can use paper, you can use cloth, all different varieties. There's a lot of different choices. Think about what suits your business. I'd recommend if you're in takeaway food or anything like that, are people really going to reuse a cloth bag if you give them that every time, because they might spill their curry through it? The best option for you might be recycled paper. Are they really going to reuse a thicker plastic bag if they're going to spill their items in it? So think about what bag they're most likely going to get the most amount of uses out of, or is going to go to the right environmental solution. You can use a thicker plastic bag if you choose to. I would recommend, so technically the law bans anything under 35 microns or less. I would not recommend, from our opinion, we don't think there's any value in something that's a 36 or 40 micron bag. It's not in the spirit of the legislation, and you'll probably get a fair bit of kickback from customers. Yes, it's technically legal. It might have those symbols on it saying I'm reusable. It is probably technically legal, but for a long-term strategy, I would recommend that businesses really consider going much further. And if you must stay in plastic, say you're a bait shop and you've got very wet goods and things like that, and you think, no, plastic is definitely the best choice for us, then you might want to consider something really thick, really reusable, and maybe made out of recycled plastic. So think what you can use for the longer term. Otherwise, I will flag that another state, WA, has just banned all plastic shopping bags with handles. So, and they banned lightweight bags about 2 years ago. So I think if governments are really looking for industry to see how far can we push this into true reusability. So once again, I'm just going to remind you that compostable or plant-based shopping bags are banned if they're under that thickness, but that does not ban things like your compostable kitchen caddy liner or anything like that. Now I'm just going to jump. So that's what was banned on the 1st of June. 1st of November is what I'm going to cover now. So plastic straws, stirrers and cutlery. I want kind of a grouping of utensils. So anything in single-use plastic straws, stirrers and cutlery are banned in New South Wales as of the 1st of November this year. So that applies to any kind of variation of those, food picks and things like that. If you're using it to eat or drink from, that's considered straws and cutlery and things like that. It doesn't include things like serving utensils like tongs and salad servers and the things you might use back of house. If you're a restaurant, it doesn't include your ladle you use for the soup. It's what you're supplying to your customers. Or if you're an event or a community group, your members or who's at your, at a festival and things like that. My recommendation with these, remember, bioplastics and compostable plastics are also banned. So if it looks and feels a bit like plastic and it's got, compostable written on, but if it feels it's operating a bit like plastic, it's not obviously not wood or paper or something like that, ask questions. And 99% of the time, I find that it's a bioplastic and it'll probably be called something like cornstarch or PLA, PHA, all kinds of new technology. Most governments here in Australia have decided to not accept those because the truth of the matter is that bioplastics like that, if they're only industrially compostable, if a bioplastic fork or straw is littered, it's exactly the same as normal plastic. It will injure wildlife, it creates litter, it doesn't biodegrade naturally in the environment. The only way bioplastics that are industrially compostable biodegrade is if they go in your green FOGO bin. So it must go through that industrial process. So it's a myth that a lot of people aren't aware of. So I'm doing some myth busting today. Is bioplastics are not the solution for everything. So be very careful, and you're paying a lot of extra money for these items for no environmental benefit. So really our insight from the street, it's totally up to you. Once again, consider avoidance. Are you giving out a straw just out of habit? Are you putting cutlery in your Uber Eats bags when all those deliveries are going to someone's home and they're probably not going to use wood cutlery over the cutlery they have at home? Save yourself some money because it's probably going in the bin anyway. So change some of those expectations with customers, even simply asking the question of your customers, do you need a straw or do you need a fork? Rather than it being there for them to grab, changes behaviour instantly. We found when businesses, when the large national businesses introduced, say, just a 15-cent charge for heavyweight reusable plastic bags, we saw consumption drop 90%. So they're going through 90% less volume of any kind of bag. Just that little thing actually made people stop and think. So it has a significant impact, and I would recommend, particularly with bags, if you're still giving away a free bag, the rest of the states aren't. You can't get a free bag anywhere else in Australia. Maybe paper at your takeaway store, some of those give them away for free, but a free plastic bag is unheard of right across Australia and New Zealand. So charge for it and let people know you're charging for it. It is normal everywhere else now. So stop trying to absorb that cost because you will never change your volumes and you'll just hand over more money. So it takes a little bit of time to get your customers used to it, but we've found 2-3 weeks, they understand. There's a charge if they forget their bag and they need one of yours. All of a sudden you'll see people to start to bring their bags a little bit more. And same with cutlery, if you need to charge for it or raise your prices or let people know that you'd love them to bring their own, great, fantastic, encourage that. If you do need a disposable option, I'd make it simple. Don't consider some of these new tech like bioplastics. If you need a disposable option, most retailers I'm seeing are going to paper straws. In cutlery, most are going to wood or bamboo. Just always ask your supplier, does this have a plastic coating? Does it have a bioplastic coating? Just check a few things that they haven't lined it with a plastic or something like that that you're not aware of. So just ask a few questions about the items that you're picking, because you need to be sure that there's no plastic whatsoever in it, including bioplastic. So unlike in Europe, often their regulations allow less than 1%. That is not true here. You could have 0.0001% of plastic polymer. It is considered a plastic here. So do your due diligence and just ask your supplier, is this compliant? That's the simplest thing. You don't need to become a polymer expert like me at the moment. Just ask your supplier for, is it compliant? And then the liability is on that supplier to provide the right information. Jumping across to the other grouping of items that are banned in November is plastic plates and bowls without lids. So I'm going to be clear about that. Is plastic plates, I think that's pretty easy for people to understand. Single-use plastic plates, it's the kind of plastic plates you get at a party, you might get in a food court. They could come in all different shapes and sizes. It could be called a platter, but really, if it's what you eat directly off, that's a plate. And it could be shaped a bit like a tray, but if you're eating off it, think of it like a plate. So I've seen some kind of creative ways to describe a plate, but really think about what is it used for. But if it truly is a serving platter and people are serving off it, that is not included in the ban. Bowls, they are bowls without lids. So there's a lot of debate across Australia about when is a bowl and when is it a container. So New South Wales has said that bowls without lids are banned, but they're not banning bowls with lids at this point in time. That will be considered in the future, but it's a much more complex item because you need to ensure that lid has a airtight seal, it's hygienic, it's burn proof, particularly if you've got hot curry and things like that. So if you've got a lidded bowl, the entire item is not banned. Okay, so you don't need to change the base. If you always serve your curries, say for takeaway food, in a bowl with a lid, you do not need to change that item yet. It's completely up to you. But if you're handing over a plastic bowl without a lid, and that's the majority of your customers, that is something you need to change. So there's quite a few options out there. There's lots of different paper and sugarcane bagasse plates and things like that. You're probably seeing all these options. You see them on the supermarket shelves. Your suppliers have quite a range of items. I will just note here too, all of these items, when I'm mentioning a lot of takeaway scenarios, but remember that these things actually impact when they're packaged on shelves, say like at a party wear store. Those are banned as well. So it doesn't matter. These are not just things that are where you hand over free with a takeaway store. You will see these items disappear from party wear stores, discount stores, your department stores and supermarkets, and they're already transitioning. So just keep in mind that this is not just a takeaway food thing. It could be at other areas. And then the final thing, so there's really only 3 groupings of things banned in November: straws, stirrers and cutlery, single-use plastic plates and unlidded bowls, and then finally, expanded polystyrene food containers and cups. So a lot of people see these pictures, say in the media, but don't see the description, and they think all containers and cups are banned. That's not true. We're starting with some of the most problematic plastic, which is expanded polystyrene. So we call it EPS for short. Really, EPS is basically what you find in a beanbag. So those little foam bubbles that you find in a beanbag, and we've all seen what happens if you open a beanbag and they get airborne. That's what happens in the environment with expanded polystyrene. This stuff breaks down, gets into the environment. It's not easily recyclable. So most of us phased EPS out in terms of burger clamshells and those old white cups. I often find them out the back of a community group's storeroom where they've had that big long pile of white cups for years. That's what's banned, that expanded polystyrene foam. It does not include other forms of plastic in containers and cups. So let's start with something that people are relatively used to, and this is going to be a progression through things. So a lot of people ask me, why not all containers? Why not all cups? It gets quite complex when you're dealing particularly with hot burn risk foods. So governments are taking it steadily and making sure that no one's going to be at risk or at any kind of food safety risk. So happy to answer any questions on that too, if there's any misunderstandings about. So the ban does not include the typical takeaway container or coffee cups or any kind of things like that at this point. The New South Wales Government has slated them for review in 2024, which gives some time for the innovation to develop so that we can really and truly get customers used to better ways of accepting their food. So to just, I've run through that very quickly, but that is all that is banned in the New South Wales ban. A lot of people hear about it and say, and think it's a lot of things or get confused with another state's ban. So just to really recap, I'm just going to slide back down. 1st of June, lightweight plastic shopping bags with handles of a certain thickness or less. 1st of November, single-use plastic straws, stirrers, cutlery, plates, unlidded bowls, and EPS in terms of food containers and cups. I will note just finally on that EPS is that it does not include things like the meat trays that you might see, EPS foam meat trays that butchers and fruit and veg use. I've just got a message then that I just thought my internet was breaking up then, and I thought I could have been talking to no one for a while. But no, I hope it's going okay. I'll just bring back up. So what I'm going to just quickly run through here. So those are the items. I'll answer some questions on those soon. I'm just going to quickly run through the steps to prepare. So really should have phased out those single-use plastic bags, but I'm going to focus now on what you should be doing right now to prepare for the 1st of November ban. Stop ordering would be the biggest thing. Is do a stock take. How much stock do you have? Will you use it up before the 1st of November? Consider worst case scenario too. So could this turn into, what if we had another COVID lockdown or anything? Gosh forbid. But don't overestimate that. Plan realistically. Are you going to use up your stock in that time? Because there is no grace period. So you need to work out a plan for that existing stock, even if you need to discount it or start or even talk to, if you've got a large supply of unopened stock, your supplier, if you've got a good relationship with them, they might be able to sell it in another state. So have that conversation with them. They're not obliged to take it back. That's really up to you with your business relationship with them. But I do see a lot of suppliers, I'm seeing some of them offer credits for swapping it out for a compliant item. So they might say, okay, no, we'll look after the recycling or taking back this excess stock and give you a discount on the wooden spoons and things like that. So I think this is an opportunity for suppliers to think how they can best serve their customers as well. So stop ordering now. Why I say don't wait is that currently around the world, the world is still going through COVID. Most of these items are made in China, Taiwan, Indonesia, Malaysia, the UK. The shipping delays are substantial, so don't leave it to the last minute. A lot of suppliers, we see it every time a ban comes in, there's always a proportion of people that leave it to the last month and there's no stock left. So don't leave it to the last minute. Get in now, get your orders in, and if you can, transition early. I find the businesses that transition early and get their customers used to it early have the smoothest experience. And particularly if they put up signage, because your customers start to know this is coming. If you surprise them with it at the end, they tend to react more. You can, if you've got large amounts of stock, you can transfer it to another state or someone else that hasn't banned these items yet, but be very careful. A large proportion of states have banned a lot of these items. So lightweight plastic shopping bags can't go anywhere. Sorry, all of the rest of Australia and New Zealand have banned them. So it's time to recycle those. The option for those is recycling. When it comes to straws, cutlery, plates, bowls, and things like that, the states that have already banned these items are Queensland, South Australia, WA, and ACT. Victoria is banning them as February next year, and then the other Northern Territory and Tasmania will probably soon follow. So that's why I say there's not many places for this to go. You either use it up or it will need to be recycled. You can send it to landfill if you really want, but it's not really the best environmental solution. And there is a great opportunity in New South Wales. I will mention that as I come up to that. So I reiterate, you speak to your supplier, have that honest conversation about what your best long-term options are. First, before you even have that conversation, think about what you really want to do. You might also have decided, I'm not going to use straws anymore, rather than letting your supplier decide for you. But get them to show you some options. Think about reusables. Can you even get 10% of your customers? Can you offer a discount for or some kind of promotion or incentive? Can you introduce reusable items? You know, for an extra $1, you can buy this nice branded reusable cutlery with your purchase. I've seen some fantastic initiatives by very small retailers that have actually got more sales because they're aware of their particular customer, seeking those brands more and more that are thinking innovatively about sustainability. So make sure everything is compliant, food safe, and things like that. And I will reiterate, when you talk to your supplier, they are obliged to provide the accurate information. If you're not sure or you're having trouble getting that information, frankly, I wouldn't purchase it unless I was sure. If you do want to continue purchasing with them and you just need to double check, feel free to reach out to us. One key thing that I think a lot of people forget is informing your team and informing your customers ahead of time. So don't leave it up to the media to educate your customers and your team that you're kind of waiting on luck of the draw there of, did all your customers hear the TV ads or the bus, did they see the bus stop ad? Put the signage up now. So there is signage available in 15 languages, mind you. So we translated all the posters into 15 languages that we know are most common in a retail context. So put those posters up, they tell your customers that it's the law and that this is coming, and it gets them used to what you're going to be doing differently. And I would say that you will have a very smooth transition of that if you do that now and tell them what's coming. The worst transitions I see is if you surprise customers with one day, it all changes. And your team, get your team on board. We find, particularly if you're in retail, you probably have a very millennial kind of team members. Those young team members are highly sustainably motivated, and we've actually found some of them shifting businesses based on sustainable ethos. So they can be spruiking what you're doing to each of your customers. There's lots of resources available. So all these fact sheets and guides and things like that are all available on the website. Our team is leaving these with businesses, but we can't promise that we're going to get to every store in person. We've actually had our team member, Matt, you might have even had a visit from him in the last couple of days. He's there in Coffs Harbour. He was going to be doing physical sessions, but he's been busy visiting stores But we do have a limited amount of time and we certainly won't see everyone. We're just trying to focus on some high density areas in the time that we've been allocated. But you can always check in with us via the hotline, these kinds of sessions, and then access all of these resources on the website. As I've mentioned, we're visiting lots of stores, but we won't get to everyone. I'm running monthly online sessions. So the last Wednesday of every month, I run a session where people can kind of pop in, ask their questions and things like that. If in doubt, you can always call our hotline, email us, and all those kinds of things. So I'm just going to put up there the key website that you need to be aware of is go to the website first because most of your questions are answered there. There's FAQs, there's questions about providing straws for people with a disability because you are allowed to provide straws in certain circumstances, and I'll probably cover that in the Q&A. But there's our hotline number and our email.